Hello, humans. I recently went shopping again, as I am wont to do, and I picked up another buck knife. So this is, according to the box, the Spitfire, which should be what it is. It is the USA-made buck. As you can see, they put a some kind of store stamp over the actual US logo, but it is made in the US. Little notice, knife flaws, Proposition 65, may have nickel in it, it's a stainless steel. Yeah, okay, kind of whatever. Which open you do open. I do get paperwork in the box, okay. That's it. Message from the Buck family. Yeah, I have many knives at this point. Forever warranty. Send repairs and sharpening to warranty department. Returns and exchanges to customer service. Okay, if you have any issues with the knife. Misuse, abuse, normal wear, or products have been modified in any way. That tracks. Alright. Yeah. Oh, it has the actual Bible verse written out. God loved the world so much that he gave his only son so that anyone who believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Okay, that isn't relevant. So this is the buck. Oh, it's got a sticker on the blade. Cool. This is the Buck 722 Spitfire. It's got a sticker on the blade. That's incredibly annoying. This is why I always have a long thumbnail, so I can actually like get to stuff like this. Alright, well that's off to the side. So it's a mid-mounted lock back. Oh wow, that's actually not quite able to flick it. Drop point blade with thumb ramp. You've got a hole for opening. You've got what appears to be a very, very slight recurve on a mid-height. Is that a flat grind? What do I have that's straight around here? Pad of paper, that'll do. I just want to see, yeah, what appears to be a straight edge, so that's actually pretty cool. You know, a lot of the times with buck knives especially, what you end up seeing is a hollow grind, which nothing against hollow grinds necessarily, but I do prefer a flat grind personally, especially on folders. Fixed blades, I can go either way, but on a folder, I do actually really like having a flat grind, so that's pretty cool. You have sort of like a little choil area. You definitely have enough room to put your finger. I wouldn't want to like, more of a fingertip choil for detail work or whatever, but there is enough room to put your finger there, so that's fairly nice. Got this swedge section on the drop point. This is... The blade shape reminds me of a bird's bill. I don't know how well that's showing across on camera, but something about this up reminds me of like the skull of a bird. Yeah. Buck USA stamped onto the blade. It's not printed, that is actually indented and stamped, which I think is pretty cool. And then we have 722, and I'm assuming that's a year mark for 2023. Yeah, it's gotta be. They have to be aluminum scales at a guess. Like, this thing is so light. Yeah, they've got to be aluminum scales. You've got jimping back here. It's interesting jimping. It's a bunch of little holes that have been drilled onto either side. And then on the blade, you have some more traditional jimps. So you actually get like quite a bit of traction. And then the jimps back here, the edges are definitely sharp. Like, you get a lot of traction back here because you have all of these sharp little grooves digging into your hand. So your hand's not, like, once you're locked into a grip, you are locked into that grip until you decide you're not. Like, you can let go fairly easily, like it's not gonna catch you like it's got a hook or something, but it is definitely sharp and grabby enough that if you decide this is where I'm holding it, this is where you are holding it, which I quite like. Screw construction, one-sided screws, which is pretty nice, although I do kind of wish that they had the nicer ends on the show side, just personal taste. Buck logo on both the front and the back, and a 4-position pocket clip. Now, is this drop shutty? Not quite. But it is fairly smooth. This isn't like a super fidgety knife. This is definitely built to be more of a work knife. You're not going to be able to flick it as easily, despite having the opening hole instead of like thumb studs or something more traditional for slow rolling the open. You're not really going to be able to overcome the back spring in such a way that lets you flick this. Yeah, even giving it all of the wrist I got, I just can't quite get there. Maybe if I were to loosen it up, but I'm also going to assume that this thing is running on bearings given how stable it is. Yeah, it looks like it is in fact running on bearings, so it's not, like the action is never going to be super fidget friendly, which is totally fair. That is not what this knife is about. This is a tough little knife for work. I got the aluminum option. The store that I went to only had, or I got the orange aluminum option. The store that I went to had options for silver, black, and orange, and I like the orange the most. I believe on their website you can customize it to a whole bunch of different colors, which is just a point of interest. One thing I will note that I'm a little bit annoyed by immediately off the bat is that they didn't knock down this edge right here on the inside for the lockback. So it's not super going to affect you unless you're like playing with it like I am, but this is actually like sharp, which is a little bit frustrating. Pocket clip is wide, a bit heavy, but fairly attractive, I think. It's not quite deep carry, but it's fairly deep, and you have that little lanyard hole, which is perfectly fine. What does this remind me of? I think this kind of reminds me of some of the Spyderco bird knives. Just initial impressions. Yeah. This is definitely going to be a tough knife. I feel like especially in gloves, just the amount of like jimping and retention that you're getting, but also how neutral the handle is. Like you're not super locked into a grip, right? So if you have bigger hands or if you have gloves on or something like that, this is still fairly approachable. The only thing that I'm not a huge fan of is that it's not completely one-handed operation. Opening, easy enough to do with one hand, slow rolling it, but it's not quite there. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you can't get it to drop with one hand. Let me see if I can do that again. So it's just push down and then, yeah, you got to give it a good click in order to get it to overcome just the very end of that lock. But once you get it there, it does work fairly well, so that's pretty cool. Let's see what the factory edge is like. It's sharp, but it's not very well refined. Like it is a little bit of a toothier edge. Yeah, you can see there just a little bit of rolling at the end, which isn't caused by how sharp it is. Like it is sharp enough to do the paper cuts very efficiently, but it's not super refined. There's a little bit of toothiness left to it, which is what's actually causing that that tearing to act like that. Yeah, you can definitely feel it just a little bit on the fingernail test, where it's sharp, it's cutting into my fingernail, but there's little bumps in it. A toothier edge, it's a bunch of micro serrations. You can sharpen it out. You can also not sharpen it out. I don't know anything about this knife yet, so I want to, do my initial impressions and do my little week of test and carry and work with the factory edge to see how that holds up. But it's not bad. It's just a little bit different from what I expected. It's going to be good on fibrous materials like the grain bags and stuff like that, which is nice. Swedge adds a little bit of aesthetic flair, theoretically helps a little bit with longer cuts. I don't know how big of a difference that's going to make, but I think aesthetically it looks really cool. Yeah, right out the box, I like this. I don't see too many non-fidget friendly knives that are still well made and have some care taken to them. And this definitely does feel like one, It's really and truly a two-handed operating knife that somebody has taken the care to make properly. Like it feels well made, but it's not fidget friendly. It's not playing more into the knife knife guy culture of, super, super fun to fidget around with, click, 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 which I love doing too, don't get me wrong, but I do like seeing tools for people who want tools. And that is really and truly what this feels like. Lockback, obviously, very, very strong lock. Out of your more traditional set of locks, I believe it's the strongest, until you start getting into like your shark locks and your what's that cold steel one? Tri-lock? Shark locks, tri-locks, like the ultra tough stuff. Until you start getting into them, you're doing good with the back lock. Is that sharp enough to scrape a fire steel? No, it's got to be awfully close. The wedge might actually be sharp enough to scrape a fire steel off of. No, maybe not. Maybe? Out near the tip it definitely is. Moving back a little bit though, I don't think it is. Yeah. As usual, I will be back in a little bit to see how it worked through all my testing and what I thought carrying it for a little bit. I will be back now. We are back. So it's actually been a fair amount over a week that I've been playing with this little guy, and I have to say, I like it more and more every single day. So the first thing that I want to correct from the first part of the video is you can reverse flick it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to in the camera view. Yeah. It does take a little bit of wrist for me personally. You have to fight the backlock, which just leads to this really... It's not counterintuitive, but it's a very, very different type of tension to like a regular detent. So, as you can see, the point of most tension is actually right here, a little bit outside. So when you're flicking, this part's really easy, and then it starts to get tight. So what you need is to get through that section with speed, which just leads to this really different flicking feeling. Dropping it's nice and easy with one hand. Opening it isn't difficult, but it does take a little bit of thought and a little bit of practice. The trick that I found most worked for me personally is pulling it out of my pocket and then flicking it straight downwards as soon as it's out of my pocket, so it opens like right next to my hip, which is just what I personally found worked really, really well. In terms of its steel, 420 HC from Buck, generally really, really good. The USA made stuff is slightly better, but honestly, 420 HC from Buck is like the best 420 you're gonna get, steel wise. So I absolutely rate it. I think it did a great job, held its edge beautifully. I was a little bit worried when I first started using it because it is thicker behind the edge than a lot of knives normally are, especially even with like the hollow grind to it. It does feel a little bit thicker behind the edge than a lot of knives that I have, and it worried me a little bit. But in everything that I put it through, wood cutting, I made, fires. I started some fires with it. I did wood splitting. I did wood shaving. I like some carving tasks. I cut fruits. I cut vegetables. I even cut meat for lunches and stuff like that. I used this as my steak knife. Like, it did everything that I would ask of it without any difficulty whatsoever, and I never really noticed that extra thickness behind the edge. It's not by any means outrageously thick behind the edge. It's just thicker than some things are naturally, if that makes any sense at all. The one thing that I didn't do throughout the week because I wanted to save it for this is I didn't fix the bolts. As you can see, the pretty side of the bolts are on the non-show side, and I'm not necessarily a huge fan of that. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to fix it. Body screws are going to be a T6. I don't know if closing the knife is actually going to make a difference, but I'm going to do it anyways. Not a huge fan of the body screws being a T6. Don't do this to me. Because of what you might be noticing is happening to me right now, where I'm having issues with it, like, sort of popping. Oh, don't tell me it's one side only. Okay. I'm really, really hoping that that I can actually reverse this, and it's not like those bolt heads are attached to the other side somehow. Oh my god, I don't want to strip the bolt over my bit. Okay. So this might not even be possible. This one's coming out nicely. Okay, so it's just that one right there. Cool. Are these different? There is blue Loctite on them, which is probably what's causing me my current issues. Yeah, I'm just gonna end up stripping something. God damn it. Alright, well, I'll put these two back in and we'll see if I can at least replace the pivot. I'm sure with enough time and energy and a brand new crisp T6, I could fix it, but this is exactly why T6 is such a god-awful bolt to be using, is because it's really, really easy to run into those problems. It's so small, it's incredibly weak, and very, very quickly you end up rounding out your T6 bits. And even though this is a fairly new bit, like this doesn't get used tons, and T6 in particular, I think is only like 2 months old, maybe 3 months old. It is completely starting to do that with tighter bolts, which is just super frustrating. Make sure I didn't change anything. Oh, I tightened that way too much. Okay, hold up. Yeah, that's better. Maybe that's not better. Hold on. That's the other thing. If you're having a hard time flicking it, I can probably adjust the tension using this bolt right here. It's feeling smoother than it was originally, but it's even tighter. Tension adjustment. This is actually kind of weird to me. Yeah, whatever. Whatever. Oh yeah, that's really tight. This is like loosened right off at this point. So top one loosened off, bottom one tightened down maybe? Well, it's feeling a little bit better. I'm sure I'll be able to work that back into shape. And this is why the T6s are like especially annoying, given how weak and stuff like that they are. The pivot is a T10. Yeah. Do I want to disassemble this right now? I'm actually not going to end up disassembling this. I can't make all of the bolts look super pretty. And at this point, pulling this apart and then putting it back together is just going to cause more issues than it did solutions, which is kind of annoying. I might pull this thing apart fully with a better screwdriver and just see how I feel about it at that point. But for right now, I think I'm going to leave it at that. Ergonomically, this thing is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Ergonomically, absolutely beautiful knife. This little thumb ramp gives you a lot of good indexing for those downward push cuts. But even when like I was cutting food and stuff like that, I found it really easy to index off of with my index finger and do my cuts, use my point. Super, super nice. Again, it's not really any recurve, but this slight bit of flat here at the bottom made cutting into wood and stuff like that, any type of deep, hard push cut that I was doing, very, very nice and easy. Enough belly for me to do those more delicate package opening tasks. Like, ergonomically, I found this absolutely beautiful. The only thing I will note is that if your hands are bigger than mine, you're going to be probably finding this a little bit cramped. It's not super prescriptive. If your hand's quite a bit bigger, you can probably just fit off the end. But for me, like, this is right the size that I want. Any bigger and I'd probably be feeling a little bit cramped. Like I said, there we go. It is very possible to fail the flick, but wheeling it open with your thumb is also just beyond easy. Or just doing it two-handed like an old man. Right? Just your thumb, two-handed close, super nice and simple. All right. Other ergonomic features that I didn't like this. These still are super sharp. I'm not sure why, but they are. And when I was wearing gloves, not an issue at all. And even without wearing gloves, it's not like a problem unless I'm twisting in my grip or like sliding my hand around for whatever reason. And at that point, I am feeling it is rubbing into my skin. I haven't had to exfoliate my hands in the time that I've been carrying this because all of the grime on my fingers ends up caught in these little indents. And there's some down here too. Again, really and truly not the end of the world, just a little different. And same deal back here in the space cutout for your lockback. These are quite sharp as well. And it's all aluminum, so it's not like there's tons of a benefit to doing it that way. But that's the way that they did it. And I do wish they'd just knocked those down a hair more than they did. Yeah. But I like it. Swedge, kind of whatever. Edge held up exactly like 410 from Buck usually does, especially the USA made Buck stuff. The other thing that really was noticeably felt premium to me is how tightly the blade fits into the handle. Like you can see very, very minimal gapping across that whole thing. And a big part of that is the fact there's no distal taper, right? All the taper for the tip is right near the end. Oh, it just remains centered throughout my screwing with it. That's cool. Which helps you create those really, really tight fit ups. But there's some knives, especially fairly budget knives, that just don't have that good feel to them and do not feel like they have that extra little bit of care done. There's a little bit more space. It just looks a little loosey goosey. And that's not a huge problem, but it is a downside. And speaking of price, this thing was like 70 Canadian bucks with tax. Beautiful. Beautiful. In that price range, I cannot complain. Like this is super, super happy making. For our size comparisons, we have our CVV Chevalier. So as you can see, it is actually smaller than the CVV Chevalier. Here it is also next to our Wee Banter. It is quite a bit bigger than the Wee Banter. That very, very comfortably puts it into what I consider to be a medium-sized knife. Anything smaller than the Wee Banter is small. CVV Chevalier, very, very normal medium-sized knife to me personally. And then here it is up against its hardworking grandpa, the Buck 110. As you can see, a good deal smaller than the Buck 110. The Buck 110 is generally what I consider to be the upper end of the medium-sized knives. And here it is next to a Zippo, just because everybody has seen a Zippo. Drop your damn thing. There we go. Do that with the Buck 110s too, but the lockback is so far back that I always feel like I'm going to cut my fingers, so I tend not to. In terms of thickness, up against our Zippo, you can see it's a little bit thinner than the Zippo. And up against the 110, it's going to be quite a bit thinner than the 110. Yeah, like it's a hair over half the thickness of the 110. Pocket clip, I like it for work knives, which is absolutely what I consider this to be. Having this much of the blade or the knife coming out of my pocket makes it really easy to grab, even with fairly thick forging gloves on. Super easy to get into. The thumb hole's nice and big enough that I can get the thumb of my glove in there and pop the blade open. Absolutely no issues with the medium carry clip, especially on a work knife. I believe I said the same thing when I was talking about the Spyderco PM2, and I completely stand by it here. Great pocket clip for what it is meant to do. Does not raise any hot spots. I never noticed it when I was using it. It is very long visually. I think it's kind of ugly, but that's about it. So my final thoughts on this are very, very simple. It's a very, very nice work knife. But if you like the overall profile, if you like the way this looks, if you like a lockback, if you need something in this sphere, I don't think it's a good deal. I don't think it's the best deal in its class. I do think it's a good deal, right? Like, absolutely all over this guy at 70 bucks. Like, grand. Absolutely what I want. But for 100 US bucks, which is
what, 130 Canadian, so $50 more, 60, 50, $60 more, which isn't an insignificant amount. Don't get me wrong. You can get it with an S35 or S30V blade, which is such a big upgrade that, and like you can get different color options and stuff like that too at that point. I think that that is the better deal if you like the profile. If that's not outside of your budget, this is absolutely something worth jumping on. I do think it is still a good deal. It's very comfortable. The fit and finish feel excellent. Buck's warranty alone, great. Like, I don't think there's any question that Buck has an amazing warranty. It held together really weird, really good. I should have pulled it apart before trying to film this, but I am a little concerned with whatever's going on. I think it's just because it's under tension, which means I need something with a little bit more grip to it in order to pull it out. And the screwdriver that I keep at my desk doesn't have that, which, not a knock against that. It's just a little weird. I am glad they did put some blue Loctite in there in order to keep them from backing out in use. Even if it is causing me a little bit of detriment today, that's not the end of my world. But yeah, I genuinely consider this to be a very, very recommendable knife. Like, right at the top of my field for a good knife right now is probably this guy. It's comfortable. It's, once you figure out the flicking, it's not difficult to flick, and it is quite fun to flick over and over again. There's not much fidget factor compared to, like, well, button locks of Vivi Chevalier, right? This is beyond fun, and you can do it forever. So it is less fidget friendly than something like this with a lockback, but I never had any issues fidgeting with it when I was driving or stuff like that, right? So, big plus. Yeah, I highly recommendable. I think it's a great time. Stay safe and have fun out there.